Let me ask you something before this story even begins. What if everything they told you about yourself, every insult, every dismissal, every time someone looked right through you like you were invisible, what if all of that was wrong? What if the very people who were supposed to protect you were the ones building the cage around you? And what if, despite all of that, the chains, the silence, the being sent away so others could shine, what if you were the one they could never truly stop? There is a girl in this story. Her name is Amina. And the day she was sent to fetch water from a distant stream, the day her stepmother chose to exile her so her own daughters could steal the spotlight, that was the day Amina's real story began. Because the prince wasn't supposed to meet her. The prince wasn't supposed to see her, and yet he did. Stay with me, because what happens in this story is not just a folktale. It is a reminder to every person who has ever been pushed to the back of the room that your time is coming. It is already on its way. If this story already has you feeling something, hit subscribe. More tales are coming and you don't want to miss them. Tales by RM, where real stories live. The village of Ikide woke up that morning the way it always did. Slowly, beautifully. The smell of cooking fires drifting through the compounds. The sound of children already laughing somewhere in the distance. It was the kind of morning that felt like a gift. But not for Amina. Long pause. Amina had been awake before the sun, not because she wanted to be, but because Madame Ngozi, her stepmother, the woman who had taken her father's name and his household and slowly, methodically taken everything else, had a job for her. Pause. Low voice. While the rest of the village buzzed with a single piece of news, Prince Emeka was coming. The prince, the heir to the royal house, had arrived in Ikede to find his queen. Madame Ngozi was already planning. Sarcastic. Not for Amina, of course. For Bola, for Chinyere, her daughters, her real daughters. The ones she spent weeks dressing, oiling, coaching on how to stand, how to smile, how to speak softly in the presence of royalty. The ones who mattered. Amina watched them from the doorway of the kitchen that morning. She watched her stepsisters being fitted in bright wrappers, gold earrings being pressed into their ears, her stepmother's hands moving fast and sure over Bola's braids. Nobody looked in Amina's direction. Nobody ever did. And then Madame Ngozi turned, and when she found Amina standing there watching, her face changed, not with warmth, never with warmth, with irritation. Firm voice. What are you standing there for? You think this is a show? Get the big pot, go to the stream, the far stream, not the village well, and fetch water, and don't come back until it is full. The far stream. She knew exactly what she was doing. The far stream would take Amina most of the morning to reach, and most of the afternoon to return from. By the time she came back, the prince would have seen Bola and Chinyere. The plan would already be set. Amina said nothing. She picked up the pot. She walked. The path to the far stream wound through a part of the bush that most people avoided, not because it was dangerous, but because it was quiet. Too quiet for a village that liked noise. But Amina had always loved that quiet. It was the only space in her life that belonged entirely to her. She found the stream where it always was, deep, clear, running steady over smooth stones, the light hitting the surface in a way that made the whole place feel like it was breathing. She set down the pot. She kneeled. She did not hear the footsteps at first. When she looked up, there was a man, not a farmer, not a hunter, a young man in riding clothes. His horse tethered some distance behind him, looking at her with an expression she did not recognize. Not the way men in Ikede looked at her, not through her, or past her, or at the pot in her hands. He was looking at her face. She stood up slowly. She was not afraid. She was a girl who had learned not to fear people. She had lived with enough of them who wanted to diminish her, so she looked back. He spoke. He spoke first. I apologize for startling you. My name is Emeka. I am passing through. He said it simply, with no performance. He did not tell her which Emeka. He did not say prince. And something about that, the ordinary honesty of it, made Amina reply without guarding herself. I am Amina. I am fetching water.
She held up the pot as if he might have missed it. He laughed, a real laugh, surprised and warm, and then he sat on a nearby stone, quite naturally, as if they had been talking for years, and asked her, what is it like living in Ikede? Not who are you trying to impress, not where is your family, who is your father, just what is it?
Amina answered him honestly, the way she had never answered anyone, because no one had ever asked. She told him about the compound, about the morning fires, about the way the market sounded on Eke Day, about the path through the quiet bush. She told him about the things she noticed that other people walked past. He listened, not politely, actually listened. His eye stayed on her face the whole time, and when she stopped, he said, "You see things. Doesn't everyone?" "No," he said quietly. "They really don't." The pot was full by the time they finished speaking. He helped her lift it without being asked. They said goodbye the way strangers do, when they both feel that they are not quite strangers anymore. No promises, no grand declarations, just a look that lasted a second longer than it should have. Amina carried the water home with a feeling she could not name sitting quietly in her chest. She did not know who he was yet. She would find out soon enough.
The village of Ikede had never buzzed like this in living memory. Every compound, every corner, every market stall, people were talking about one thing and one thing only. The prince had visited. The prince had walked through Ikede. The prince had spoken to several eligible young women, including, loudly, according to both of them, Bola and Chinyere. Bola said he had smiled at her twice. Chinyere said he had held her hand when greeting her. Madame Ngozi listened to both accounts with equal satisfaction, nodding and mentally preparing herself to host a royal family. She was already choosing which room to repaint. Amina said nothing. She sat in the kitchen that evening, pounding something in the mortar, and she kept her face still. She kept the name inside her like a stone she wasn't ready to turn over.
Emeka. Back at the palace, two things were happening. The first, the young women of Ikede were being presented, evaluated, considered. Most of them were lovely. Several were accomplished. None of them stayed in his mind after they left the room. The second thing, Prince Emeka could not stop thinking about a girl at a stream who had looked at him like he was a person instead of a title, who had described her village like she was composing a poem without trying to, who had not asked him for anything, not performed anything, not adjusted herself at all for his benefit. She had just been herself, completely, entirely herself. He asked around quietly. It was not difficult. Ikede was not a large place, and the name Amina, the girl who fetched water from the far stream, the one who lived in the compound of Madame Ngozi as a servant, that name found him before the day was out. He returned to Ikede the following morning. He did not send a messenger. He did not announce himself with ceremony. He came himself, on horseback, and he rode directly to the compound of Madame Ngozi. Madame Ngozi's face when she saw him. You must understand, it was the face of a woman who believed all her careful planning had finally paid off. She practically floated to the gate. "Your Highness, welcome, welcome, please come in. Bola, Chinyere, come quickly." The prince greeted her with respect. Then he said, "Thank you. I am here to speak with Amina." The silence that followed that sentence had weight, real weight. Madame Ngozi's smile did not fall. It froze, like ice on a face that had forgotten it was cold. "Amina?" she repeated. "Yes," he said pleasantly. "Amina. I believe she lives here." Madame Ngozi tried. She always tried.
Ah, Amina is just she is Your Highness. Surely Bola would be more suitable. She has been prepared especially for. The prince's expression did not change. Amina, please. Amina came out of the back of the compound, still dusting ash from her hands. She had been tending the fire. Her wrapper was plain, her hair simply braided. She stopped when she saw him, and he stopped when he saw her. Whispers. Something passed between them in that moment that everyone standing in that compound felt, but couldn't explain.
He walked toward her. I am glad I found you. There is a gathering at the palace tomorrow. I would like you to come. Behind him, Bola and Chinyere had appeared at the doorway of the main house. Their mouths were open. Their faces carried expressions that could have been carved into stone and used as a warning. Amina said quietly, I will come. She said it the way she said most things, without drama,
Without performance. Like she was simply stating a fact that had already been decided somewhere she couldn't fully see. Madame Ngozi stood at the gate long after the prince had ridden away. Her face was doing something complicated. Her daughters were already arguing behind her. The compound was never quiet again after that day.
She started to weave. Not with anger, not with tears, with focus, with her hands moving the way her mother's hands had once moved, the mother she barely remembered but sometimes felt in her fingers when she worked with cloth. Weaving something simple, something modest, but something entirely her own. It took her most of the morning. By the time she was done, she had a garment that was not silk, not lace, not embroidered with gold thread, but it was made with intention, with care. And there is a kind of beauty in that no amount of spending can replicate. She arrived at the palace compound on foot, while around her carriages and horses arrived carrying daughters of nobles dressed in fabrics that had travelled from cities far away. She walked through the gate with her chin level, her back straight, and her homemade garment wrapped around her cleanly. She was noticed immediately, not with kindness.
Lady Ugochi saw her first. Lady Ugochi, a woman of influence, wide reputation, and a voice designed to carry, sat at the highest table near the royal dais and looked at Amina the way certain kinds of wealthy people look at things they consider beneath them, with something between amusement and contempt. She said it loud enough to be heard. Is that a girl or a market woman? Someone should tell the prince what kind of guest he has invited. The murmur that ran through the assembled guests was the specific sound of people who are enjoying someone else's humiliation. Heads turned, eyes moved to Amina, waiting to see if she would break. Amina stopped walking. She turned toward Lady Ugochi, and she spoke, clearly, calmly, without a raised voice. Amina voice. My lady, I have heard your name many times. I am glad to finally put a face to it. I know I do not come here with the wealth this room is used to. I come here with what I have. My hands, my mind, and my character. If that is not enough for some in this room, I trust the right person will decide what is enough. Lady Ugochi opened her mouth. She closed it again. No one had ever spoken back to her quite like that. Not with aggression, not with defensiveness. Just with a quiet, settled truth that left no room for a response. Firm voice. Prince Emeka had been watching from the moment she walked in. He had seen everything. The entrance, the murmur, the stillness she held around herself like armor. Emotional. He had watched her answer Lady Ugochi with the kind of grace that cannot be purchased or rehearsed. And when she finally found the seat that had been quietly reserved for her near his table, trembling voice, he leaned toward his attendant and said softly, so that only the attendant could hear. Prince Emeka voice. Whispers. That is her. Long pause. The feast continued. Amina ate and listened and spoke when spoken to, and noticed things, the way she always noticed things. Emotional. And by the time the evening was cooling and the last of the lamps were being lit against the dark, she realized she had not once, not for a single moment, wished she was someone else. That was new. Long pause. Drop a comment below. Whose side are you on? I read every single one. And don't go anywhere, because what comes next will change everything. It is one thing to be chosen in private. It is another thing entirely to be chosen in front of everyone who ever doubted you. And Prince Emeka understood the difference. The following week, a gathering was called. Not a quiet, private meeting, not a message sent by a palace attendant in the night. A real gathering. Firm voice, nobles, village elders, the families of every eligible woman who had been presented, all assembled at the palace court in the morning light. Madame Ngozi came dressed in her finest, bola and chinyere on either side of her, every bead around their necks chosen with precision. She had convinced herself, somehow, even still, that there had been a mistake. That the prince would see sense. Amina was brought separately. She had been told only to come. She did not know what was about to happen. She stood at the edge of the assembled crowd and looked at the faces of people who had spent their lives walking past her, and she felt, for the first time in a long time, unafraid. Firm voice. Prince Emeka stood before the assembly. He waited until the court was fully silent. He was young, this prince, but he had a stillness to him that made rooms quiet without effort. He said, "My people, my elders, my family. You have brought before me many wonderful and accomplished young women. I have been grateful for each of them. But a king does not only need beauty, or wealth, or accomplishment beside him. He needs someone who will see the world as it is, and still choose to be honest inside it. He needs someone whose character does not change depending on the room she is standing in." He paused, and then he looked across the courtyard, directly at Amina. "I have found that person, and I ask her now, before all of you, to stand beside me." The courtyard did not murmur. It went completely still. The kind of still that only happens when something real is occurring, when life is doing something that will be talked about for generations. And into that stillness, Amina walked. Soft voice. Trembling voice. Not fast. Not dramatically. The way she walked everywhere. With her chin level, and her back straight, and her eyes open. She stopped in front of him, and he took both of her hands in his. And he asked her, quietly, so that only she heard the private version of the question, "Will you?" Emotional. She looked at him for a long moment. This man who had sat on a stone by a stream and listened to her describe morning fires. This man who had come to her compound himself instead of sending word. This man who had watched her stand up to Lady Ugochi and had said nothing to help her. Because he had known, without being told, that she did not need help. Amina voice. "Yes," she said. Amina was dressed that day in clothes she had not made herself. The palace women had spent days on her gown, ivory and gold, fabric that caught the light as she moved. But she wore it the same way she had worn her simple homemade garment at the feast, as if the clothes were just clothes, and she was just herself. And that was enough. As she passed through the gates into the palace for the last time as a guest, now entering as its queen, she looked back once. Not at Madame Gosi, not at her stepsisters. She looked back at the road she had walked from. The long road. The dusty, early morning, nobody watching road. She looked at it the way you look at something that made you strong when it was trying to break you. And then she turned around and she walked forward into everything that was already hers. I want to say something to you before we close this story, not as a narrator, as someone who believes in what this kind of story holds. Amina was never lucky. Let me be clear about that. She was not discovered because fate smiled on her. She was not elevated because someone felt sorry for her. She was ready. When the moment came, unexpected, unannounced, at a stream she had been sent to as punishment, she was ready. Because she had never stopped being herself. That is the thing that Madame Ngozi could not take from her. The stepsisters could not take it. Lady Ugochi, with all her cruelty, could not reach it. The self that Amina protected, the honest, clear-eyed, unperforming self, that is her real inheritance. And here is what I need you to carry with you today. If you are in your Amina season right now, if you are the one carrying the pot, walking the long road, being sent away so others can take your place, I need you to hear this. Your season is not over. The stream is still ahead of you. And the person who is supposed to see you will see you. Not because you performed, not because you competed, but because you stayed true. There is a very old truth buried at the heart of every folktale ever told in Africa. It is this. What is yours cannot be taken by the people who try to keep it from you. It will find you. It always finds you. Amina did not fight for her crown. She did not scheme for it. She did not dress for it or perform for it or beg for it. She just lived. Honestly, at a stream, in a kitchen, in a palace courtyard, in front of a woman who wanted to humiliate her. She just kept being Amina. And the crown came to her, as it always does. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and I'll see you in the next tale. Subscribe to Tales by RM, where real stories live.